Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining is the self in all beings. We begin today's satsang with a prayer by Srimati Sapna Ganesh, followed by the chanting of Muktakatrayam by Sri Nandakumarji.
दक्षिणामूर्तिसारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमां रमणाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां वन्दे गुरुपरम्परां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम् शुक्लाम्बरधरं विष्णुं शशिवर्णं चतुर्भुजं प्रसन्नवदनं ध्यायेत् सर्वविघ्नोपशान्तये आङ्गिकं भुवनं यस्य वाचिकं सर्ववाङ्मयम् आहार्यं चन्द्रतारादि तं नमः सात्विकं शिवम् ॐ नमो भगवते श्रीरमणाय. Namo Ramana to everyone.
Ekam aksharam hृदि निरन्तरं भासते स्वयं विद्यते कथम् हृदयकुहरमध्ये केवलं ब्रह्ममात्रम् अहमिति साक्षात् आत्मरूपेण भाति हृदि विषमनसा स्वम् चिन्वता मज्जता आनचलनरोधा आत्मनिष्ठो भवतु देहं मृण्मयवत् जडात्मकम् अहं बुद्धिर्न तस्यास्त्यतो नाहं तत्तभावशुद्धिसमये सिद्धात्मसद्भावनशः कोऽहं भावयुत कुतो वरधिया दृष्टात्मदृष्टात्मना सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं सोऽहं स्फूर्तितया अरुणाचलशिवः पूर्णो विभाति स्वयं नमो रमण
Namo Ramana. We go on to the chanting of verses from Upadeshasaram by Ashwini Balaji and Uma Shripati.
नमो रमण कर्तुराज्ञया प्राप्यते फलम् कर्म किं परं कर्म तज्जडम् कृतिमहोदधौ पतनकारणम् फलमशाश्वतं गतिनिरोधकम् ईश्वरार्पितं नेचया कृतं चित्तशोधकं मुक्तिसाधकम् कायवाग्मना कार्यमुत्तमम् पूजनं जपश्चिन्तनं क्रमात् जगत ईषधी युक्तसेवनम् अष्टमूर्तिभृद्देव पूजनम् उत्तमस्तवादुच्चमन्दत चित्तजं जप ध्यानमुत्तमम् आद्यधारया स्रोतसा समम् सरलचिन्तनं विरलतः परम् वेदभावना सोऽहमित्यसौ भावना विदा पावनीमत भावशून्य सद्भावसुस्थिति भावना बलात् भक्तिरुत्तमा हृत्स्थले मना स्वस्थता क्रिया भक्तियोगबोधाश्च निश्चितम् नमो रमण
Namo Ramana. We now have Ramananjali music from Srimati V. Radha, followed by offerings from Pratibha and Revati Shankar.
Namo Ramana to all. Today I am taking a song written by Sri Sudhananda Bharati and the music is by Sri L. Krishnan. உள்ளமெல்லாம் உன்னருளின் வெள்ளமாமே உள்ளமெல்லாம் உன்னருளின் வெள்ளமாமே அருள் வெள்ளமாமே ரமண வெள்ளமாமே அருள் வெள்ளமாமே ரமண வெள்ளமாமே உள்ளமெல்லாம் உன்னருளின் வெள்ளமாமே அன்பென்னும் உள்ளத்தில் அடங்கி நின்றாய் அன்பென்னும் உள்ளத்தில் அடங்கி நின்றாய் அகிலாண்ட கோட்டிகளை ஆண்டு நின்றாய் அகிலாண்ட கோட்டிகளை ஆண்டு நின்றாய் அருள் வெள்ளமாமே ரமண வெள்ளமாமே அருள் வெள்ளமாமே ரமண வெள்ளமாமே உள்ளமெல்லாம் உன்னருளின் வெள்ளமாமே துன்பென்ற புயலினிலே துடிக்கும் தோணி துன்பென்ற புயலினிலே துடிக்கும் தோணி துறை சேர மெய்ஞான துணையாய் நின்றாய் துறை சேர மெய்ஞான துணையாய் நின்றாய் அருள் வெள்ளமாமே ரமண வெள்ளமாமே அருள் வெள்ளமாமே ரமண வெள்ளமாமே உள்ளமெல்லாம் உன்னருளின் வெள்ளமாமே பொன்பரவும் அருண புன்னகையால் என்னை பொன்பரவும் அருண புன்னகையால் என்னை புது மலர்ச்சி பெற செய்த புனிதானந்தா புது மலர்ச்சி பெற செய்த புனிதானந்தா அருள் வெள்ளமாமே ரமண வெள்ளமாமே உள்ளமெல்லாம் உன்னருளின் வெள்ளமாமே உள்ளமெல்லாம் உன்னருளின் வெள்ளமாமே அருள் வெள்ளமாமே ரமண வெள்ளமாமே அருள் வெள்ளமாமே ரமண வெள்ளமாமே அருள் வெள்ளமாமே ரமண வெள்ளமாமே நமோ நம
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. This is a Telugu translation of Sri Sadhu Om's composition. लोकमहागुरु लोकमहागुरु लोकेश्वरुडा रमणेश लोकमहागुरु लोकमहागुरु लोकेश्वरुडा रमणेश मौनमणि वेलुगु रमण विरिसोबगु ज्ञान स्वर्ण द्युति रमणेश मौनमणि वेलुगु रमण विरिसोबगु ज्ञान स्वर्ण द्युति रमणेश लोकमहागुरु लोकमहागुरु लोकेश्वरुडा रमणेश लोकमहागुरु लोकमहागुरु लोकेश्वरुडा रमणेश उदयकांति वले मेरेयुमेनुगल मानस गुरुवे रमणेश उदयकांति वले मेरेयुमेनुगल मानस गुरुवे रमणेश लोकमहागुरु लोकमहागुरु लोकेश्वरुडा रमणेश लोकमहागुरु लोकमहागुरु लोकेश्वरुडा रमणेश ఉన్నతి శిరమున చెయ్యత్తి వ్రొక్కెద వరములు ఒసగుము రమణీష ఉన్నతి శిరమున చెయ్యత్తి వ్రొక్కెద వరములు ఒసగుము రమణీష లోకమహాగురు లోకమహాగురు లోకేశ్వరుడా రమణేశ లోకమహాగురు లోకమహాగురు లోకేశ్వరుడా రమణేశ పామరులు కూడా పూజింపగ నిన్ను ప్రేమ చూపెదవు రమణేశ పామరులు కూడా పూజింపగ నిన్ను ప్రేమ చూపెదవు రమణేశ లోకమహాగురు లోకమహాగురు లోకేశ్వరుడా రమణేశ లోకమహాగురు లోకమహాగురు లోకేశ్వరుడా రమణేశ మతాతీతమగు సమత భావము మనుజులకీయవో రమణేశ మతాతీతమగు సమత భావము మనుజులకీయవో రమణేశ లోకమహాగురు లోకమహాగురు లోకేశ్వరుడా రమణేశ లోకమహాగురు లోకమహాగురు లోకేశ్వరుడా రమణేశ చిరుచీకటి గల పౌర్ణమిని ఇంచు వెలుగుమా కిమ్ము రమణేశ చిరుచీకటి గల పౌర్ణమిని ఇంచు వెలుగుమా కిమ్ము రమణేశ లోకమహాగురు లోకమహాగురు లోకేశ్వరుడా రమణేశ లోకమహాగురు లోకమహాగురు లోకేశ్వరుడా రమణేశ జ్ఞాన స్వర్ణ ద్యుతి రమణేశ మానస గురువే రమణేశ జ్ఞాన స్వర్ణ ద్యుతి రమణేశ మానస గురువే రమణేశ లోకమహాగురు లోకమహాగురు లోకేశ్వరుడా రమణేశ లోకమహాగురు లోకమహాగురు లోకేశ్వరుడా రమణేశ వరములు వసగుము రమణేశ ప్రేమ చూపెదవు రమణేశ వరములు వసగుము రమణేశ ప్రేమ చూపెదవు రమణేశ లోకమహాగురు లోకమహాగురు లోకేశ్వరుడా రమణేశ లోకమహాగురు లోకమహాగురు లోకేశ్వరుడా రమణేశ మానస గురువే రమణేశ ప్రేమ చూపెదవు రమణేశ మానస గురువే రమణేశ ప్రేమ చూపెదవు రమణేశ లోకమహాగురు లోకమహాగురు లోకేశ్వరుడా రమణేశ జ్ఞాన స్వర్ణ ద్యుతి రమణేశ నమో రమ
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We are meditating on the 29th verse of Sarvashma. मौनेन मज्जन्मनसा स्वमूल चर्चैव सत्यात्मविचारणं स्यात् एषोऽहमेतन्न मम स्वरूपम् इति क्रमासत्यविचारणाङ्गम्. To inquire silently and deeply as to the source of the mind, the I, alone is self-inquiry.
Ideas like I am that or I am not that are but aids. Silently, when we dip into the self, only then we will get back to our natural state. Anything other than the self, which cannot be, but the illusion is there. So, when we try to hold on to this mind and inquire, who am I? That is an aid, says Bhagavan. One more aid is to hold on to Bhagavan's feet always and get back to the self. I present you a song written by Muruganar Swami, translation by R.N. Gopal, music by S.V. Venkatraman. ಮೌನ ನಿಜ ಪಾದ ಅದ್ಭುತದ ಪಾದ ಸಾಯುಜ್ಯ ಪಾದ ಶ್ರೀರಮಣ ಪಾದ ಮೌನ ನಿಜ ಪಾದ ಅದ್ಭುತದ ಪಾದ ಸಾಯುಜ್ಯ ಪಾದ ಶ್ರೀರಮಣ ಪಾದ ಜ್ಞಾನವೇನೋ ದಾರಿಯ ತೋರಿಸಿದ ಶ್ರೀಪಾದ ಪ್ರೇಮ ಶಾಂತಿ ತೀರಕ್ಕೆ ಕೊಂಡೊಯ್ವ ಪಾದ ಮೌನ ನಿಜ ಪಾದ ಅದ್ಭುತದ ಪಾದ ಸಾಯುಜ್ಯ ಪಾದ ಶ್ರೀರಮಣ ಪಾದ ಬಾಳಲಿ ತುಂಬಿದ ಕತ್ತಲೆ ನೀಗುತ ಜ್ಯೋತಿಯ ನೀಡಿದ ಮಂಗಳ ಪಾದ ತನ್ನ ತಿಳಿದ ಮನಕ್ಕೆ ಅರಿವನ್ನು ಬೆಳಗಿ ತನ್ನಲ್ಲೇ ಮೌನ ಸಮಾಧಿಯಾದ ಪಾದ ಮೌನ ನಿಜ ಪಾದ ಅದ್ಭುತದ ಪಾದ ಸಾಯುಜ್ಯ ಪಾದ ಶ್ರೀರಮಣ ಪಾದ ತಾನೇನೆಂದು ಮನದಿಂದ ಅರಸೆ ತಿಳಿವಳಿಕೆಯನ್ನು ತರುವಂಥ ಪಾದ ಆಶಾಪಾಶದ ಚಂಚಲತೆ ನೀಗಿ ಶಿವನನು ತೋರಿದ ಶಾಂತಾನುಭವ ಪಾದ ಮೌನ ನಿಜ ಪಾದ ಅದ್ಭುತದ ಪಾದ ಸಾಯುಜ್ಯ ಪಾದ ಶ್ರೀರಮಣ ಪಾದ ನಿಶ್ಚಲ ಭಕ್ತರ ಮನದಲ್ಲಿ ನೀನೆ ಗುರುವಾಗಿ ತನ್ ಸ್ವರೂಪ ತೋರಿಸಿದ ಪಾದ ಕ್ಷಣದಲ್ಲಿ ಈ ಚಿತ್ತವ ಪರಬ್ರಹ್ಮದೆ ನಿಲ್ಲಿಸೆ ಮಾಯಾ ಮೋಹ ನೀಗಿಸಿ ಪೊರೆದಿಹ ಪಾದ ಮೌನ ನಿಜ ಪಾದ ಅದ್ಭುತದ ಪಾದ ಸಾಯುಜ್ಯ ಪಾದ ಶ್ರೀರಮಣ ಪಾದ ಬಾಳಲಿ ತುಂಬಿದ ಕತ್ತಲೆ ನೀಗುತ ಜ್ಯೋತಿಯ ನೀಡಿದ ಮಂಗಳ ಪಾದ ಮೌನ ನಿಜ ಪಾದ ಅದ್ಭುತದ ಪಾದ ಸಾಯುಜ್ಯ ಪಾದ ಶ್ರೀರಮಣ ಪಾದ ಸಾಯುಜ್ಯ ಪಾದ ಶ್ರೀರಮಣ ಪಾದ ಸಾಯುಜ್ಯ ಪಾದ ಶ್ರೀರಮಣ ಪಾದ. ನಮೋ ರಮಣ.
Namo Ramana. We now have the reading and the sharing by Sri Nandakumarji.
In this, the book reading segment of our Satsangh, we continue to read from Fresh Discoveries, Western Seekers on Sri Ramana Maharshi, a compilation by our founder president, Sri A.R. Natarajanji. We have been going through the account of a devotee named Suzanne, written by her daughter Monica Bose, and we have gone through this account for 3 weeks now. It's a beautiful account. And last week I had done a summary of the previous 2 weeks. Today, as a recollection of our readings earlier, I just read one paragraph, the finishing paragraph where we left off, then continue for this week. I remember this is by Monica Bose, the daughter of Suzanne, and the other person in the account is Monica Bose's grandmother, that is Suzanne's mother, who has also come from England, and she is in Tirunamalai with this family. I remember an ascetic, Monica Bose says, who used to come and visit the Maharishi occasionally. He would prostrate full length before him with great ardor, and the Maharishi would sometimes glance with some tenderness at him. But once, when the ascetic rose from his salutation, I saw something new, like a flash of joyful understanding pass between them, pass between Bhagavan and the ascetic. I did not know what it meant, but I have since come to believe that it was the renunciate's recognition of the unlimited freedom enjoyed by the Maharishi and the Maharishi's acknowledgement of it. The ascetic is able to experience what is the Brahmanubhava, in which Bhagavan is always present, and that he has experienced it, Bhagavan is acknowledging. But I have since come to believe that it was the renunciate's recognition of the unlimited freedom enjoyed by the Maharishi and the Maharishi's acknowledgement of it. There he was, a virtual prisoner of the couch on which he stayed in public view all day, and sometimes on festival part of the night also. A prisoner of his extended family, by then numbering thousands worldwide, who asked him for salvation, guidance, peace, help, comfort, strength, grace, and so on. A prisoner too of the ashram management's rules and control, which for reasons of safety controlled everything that went on, even which visitors were allowed to come to him. Yet he was free, gloriously free, because as he once affirmed, he lived in the ultimate truth, which was all that he had and all that he wanted. We begin this week's reading. An Australian visitor asked the Maharishi why love was not included in the Vedantic trinity of Satchitananda, being, consciousness, bliss, or peace. The Maharishi replied to the Australian, peace is love. Hence, in his teaching, love was not separate from the Supreme Reality and was also a natural attribute of the self. Questions about love were very rare at the ashram, and to the best of my knowledge, love does not figure in the index section of the works written about him. The reason for this is that Advaitist commentators interpreted his teaching according to the conventional Advaitic or non-dual path of transcendental knowledge, jnana, on which the final achievement comes at a point when absolute or non-dual union with the God is realized. Love was considered by them, the Advaitic commentators, love was considered by them to belong to the path of bhakti or devotion, a lower path in their view, since it posited another, the loved one, and therefore had not gone beyond duality. However, the Maharishi's teaching, like that of all great masters, could not be confined within any conventional framework. In his 5 spontaneously composed poems to Arunachala, he revealed not only a heart overflowing with love for the sacred hill, but also his perception of the hill as love itself. In one hymn, he said, "Let me melt with love in thee, who art love itself. Ambuvil alipol amburu unilene anbakarai Arunachala." Let me melt with love in thee, who art love itself. And in another, he addressed the hill with the words, "Kinder even than one's own mother, such is thy love." When he addressed the hill as mother, it was to speak not of the power which is usually associated with the universal mother or Shakti, but of love and grace. Doubts disturbed the minds of some of the ashramites. Some asked themselves, how could someone who addressed Arunachala in terms of love be an Advaitist? At the height of the controversy, one of the devotees declared in an article which appeared in the journal The Path Divine that the famous work, the Ramana Gita, had been written by the Shastri with the intent to prove that the Maharishi was fully Advaitist. And one day in the hall, an old devotee asked him to put an end to the controversy by himself telling them what he was. The Maharishi replied that the love that was in him for the self was the self. For the self is love. God is love. He, unlike the questioners, had had the experience of self-realization and could speak of a love which surpassed divinity and objectivity. Silence, called the language of the self, is also love. For in true silence, there is no trace of ego, no conflict. The Maharishi himself once gave the definition of silence as the embodiment of love. Maharishi himself once gave the definition of silence as the embodiment of love. We owe to the careful reporting of the devotee Surinagama the details of the occasion on which this occurred. As she relates in a letter to her brother, dated 16th February 1949, a devotee was proposing to donate a cover made of brass and coated with silver for the Shri Chakra, an important cult object in the mother's temple, about which I shall write again further on. But the ashram authorities were of the opinion that the cover made of solid gold, solid silver, would be more appropriate. Unable to come to an agreement, the devotee and a representative of the ashram authorities came before the Maharishi and requested him to tell them what he would like best, whether brass covered with silver or solid silver. The Maharishi rebuked them quite sharply, saying, "What Bhagavan likes best is to remain silent without doing anything. If people with different opinions give up their silence, which is the embodiment of love, and come to me and say, we will do this, we will do that, and inquire of me what I like better, what can I say?" The Maharshi rebuked them sharply, saying, "What Bhagavan likes best is to remain silent without doing anything. If people with different opinions come up their silence, give up their silence, which is the embodiment of love, and come to me and say, we will do this, no, we will do that, and inquire of me what I like better, what can I say?" His silence was not a withdrawal or an absence of communication. On the contrary, it transmitted a power which calmed the mind, brought solace and knowledge. His silence, Bhagavan's silence, was not a withdrawal or an absence of communication. On the contrary, it transmitted a power which calmed the mind, brought solace and knowledge. Ganapati Muni writes, Shantir Nidantam Adhika Paramasya Shakti. That Mauna something about the audio in the chat, I think it's all right. That Mauna is Shanti when completely inverted, and when it is shining, it is Paramasya Shakti. There is no greater power than that silence. Bhagavan's silence was not a withdrawal or an absence of communication. On the contrary, it transmitted a power which calmed the mind, brought solace and knowledge. There was no need for any other action on his part except to be there and to convey the silence that as love was healing and transformative. He would not have been there with us had he chosen to follow the Advaitist usage of leaving behind society so as to be alone with the one alone. His own paternal uncle, after taking to the life of an anchorite, disappeared from his village, never to be seen again by those who knew him. The Maharshi, after living as an anchorite in the caves of the hill, made the return from seclusion to society. In that, he allowed the ashram to evolve around him. Yet, at a certain level, it is true to say that he never did leave the cave of Arunachala. In that silence, what else is there but total renunciation? Bhagavan would say, real renunciation is to find that mauna, where the ego is completely dissolved into the oneself. The renunciate tradition in India is very old, but historians like M. Diardieu tell us that it gained considerable momentum in the 2nd and 3rd centuries BC. At that time, many Hindus left temples and towns for mountain caves and forests, preferring to take the inward contemplative way to spiritual fulfillment in isolation. For them, the temple fire rituals were replaced by the sacrifice of the self on the fire altar of the heart. For those renunciates, the temple fire rituals which they were following earlier were replaced by the sacrifice of the self, the ego, on the fire altar of the heart. However, there always remained a close connection between the lone ascetic in the cave and the temple priest who stayed in the midst of the community and acted for the community. In one of the caves of Arunachala, there is evidence carved in stone of the link which existed between the cave of the renunciate and the temple for the public. For the carvings of its pillars and its mural band of animal heads, which have been dated to the 10th century by a French scholar in the cave, are exactly similar and are hence contemporary to those carved on the original temple in the big temple complex below. The carvings in the cave in the Arunachala hill, which is dated to 10th century, are the same as that present in the main temple. Thus, with intent, the temple is in the cave, the symbol of the one, while the cave, symbolized by the dark, imageless space of the innermost sanctum sanctorum, the shrine, is in the temple. The temple is in the cave, and the cave is in the temple, which represents the community of beings. All are in the one, and the one is in all, yet that one is beyond all. Those who know this, that all are in one, and that one is in all, yet beyond all, those who know this are rightly called seers, for they see the fundamental oneness of the whole of existence. For them, no more irreconcilable contraries exist, such as inner and outer reality, transcendence and immanence, seclusion and society, and even guru and devotee. So these differences which we find in philosophy and in other margas are completely erased in Bhagavan's teachings, says the writer. Those who know this rightly, that all are in the one and one is in all, yet beyond all, are rightly called the seers, for they see the fundamental oneness of the whole of existence. For them, no more irreconcilable contraries exist, such as inner and outer reality, transcendence and immanence, seclusion and society, and even guru and devotee. As the Maharishi once said, in reality, there are no others to be helped. In the evening, after leaving the ashram, we usually went for a walk around the hill. It was only rarely that we made the entire Giri Pradakshina or circumambulation of the hill along the 13 kilometers of the planets around the unmoving sun, which means keeping the hill always at one's right. Arunachala hill is the unmoving sun, and the walkers are all the planets going around that sun. The 8 cardinal points are marked by shrines, tanks, and mandapams. For those edifices date from an earlier medieval period when the Vaishnava faith was in the ascendant over the Shaiva faith, and the hill was then regarded as the wheel of time in the hands of Mahavishnu, the Lord of the Sun. So she writes that those the directional temples came up during the medieval period where the Vaishnava faith was on the ascendant, and the hill was then regarded as the chakra in Mahavishnu's hand, the wheel of time. Years later, I was talking to some French people who had just visited Tiruvannamalai, and they asked me what I had seen when performing the Pradakshina, as they were afraid they might have missed something. I told them that as the Maharishi had advised the devotees, we did not make the circuit in an outward-looking way, but walked very slowly, trying to keep our minds on the self, which is the inner Arunachala. Early devotees like D.V. Narasimha Swami tell us that until 1926, the Maharishi made the Pradakshina of the hill several times a year, accompanied by a group of devotees. The Maharishi would take the whole night to complete the circuit, sometimes longer, for he walked most of the way in the deeply absorbed state of Samadhi. When recalling the happiness and pleasure they felt when making the Pradakshina, the Maharishi specially mentioned the time. He said the usual constraints of time were avoided, for they started when they felt like it, stopped when they were tired, cooked and ate when they were hungry. Since there was not compulsion to reach a particular place at a particular time, no anxiety or preoccupation came to mar their concentration. And the concentration became blissful absorption in the timeless self. Thus, it is possible to be liberated from time even when one threads the wheel of time. There were many monuments of religious and historical interest in Tiruvannamalai, and my mother liked to show them to me. I remember particularly the hollow stone sphinxes along the Pradakshina road, each standing next to its purificatory tank. The sphinxes appear to have the head of a lion, but in fact they have the same countenance as the great faces of glory situated at the summit of the temple. We had seen earlier that on the summit of the temple there were these faces where the Vimana was kept. So she says these monuments also were looking like that. These, as Stella Cambridge points out, are composed of 3 phases: the phase of man, the phase of the lion representing the son of the Supreme Spirit, and the phase of the dragon, who, as the destroyer of the universe, stands for transcendental wisdom. So destruction in one phase, it is actually from jnana, it is actually transcendental wisdom. So only when you look at objects, we say that pralaya and all that. But The same thing which is called pralaya from a gross perspective is called transcendental wisdom in terms of jnana. How beautifully she has captured that from the symbols. These, as Stella Kramich points out, are composed of three phases: the phase of man, the phase of the lion representing the son of the Supreme Spirit, and the phase of dragon, who, as destroyer of the universe, stands for transcendental wisdom. All three are superimposed on and hence overwhelm the just discernible death's head underlying them. Today, these enigmatic sphinxes are used as mere shrines at which the pilgrims, after taking bath in the tank, make their offerings to Arunachala. But did they have a more important function in the past? For their symbology suggests that in long forgotten rites, they may have been gateways to the sun, places of initiation where the neophytes, that is, those who are new to the path, the neophytes, after being cleansed of sin and animal nature, receive the highest knowledge that led to immortality in the sun. The area surrounding the hill is like a palimpsest. For besides Vaishnava, palimpsest means an underlying slate-like thing on which the earlier recordings have been overwritten by subsequent recordings. The area surrounding hill is like a palimpsest. For besides Vaishnava and Saiva monuments, much older forms of worship survive, such as the cult of fertility trees. To this day, women who wish for a child go to such a tree, usually a numba tree, and tie to its branches a strip of cloth in the shape of a cradle, much as in ancient Celtic or Celtic practice. Nearby, there is usually a small stone chamber or dolmen through whose narrow central channel the women pass in a reenactment of birth. Yet another way of awakening the life-giving force of the great mother of all beings. The vegetation of the forest offers little more than prickly pears, wood apples, bark, and leaves for the sustenance of life. So it is surprising that sadhus managed to live there. We knew a venerable old ascetic called Shiva who lived alone in the forest off Chengam Road. Some of his visitors had built him a stone platform or bench on which he sat in a meditative position. On one of our visits, he instructed me in the age-old yoga of achieving mental concentration by linking the repetition of the sacred syllable Om to the respiration. By chanting Om in tune with the respiration, the incoming and outgoing breath. For my initiation, I had to get down with him into a narrow pit where I sat facing him cross-legged. He smelled not unpleasantly of oil and the wild. I cannot tell what benefit I would have derived from the yogic practice, which he assured me would bring me liberation within 6 months, since I did not keep it up. Perhaps this was because my faith in him was eroded when he asked us, in my opinion, betraying some envy, why the Maharishi attracted so many people to his ashram while so few came to see him. And then, once when he had brought him a bunch of bananas, he told Suzanne that the next time she came, she should bring him a good warm blanket. With the severity of the young, I was shocked. It was impossible to imagine the Maharishi making such a request. But my mother, more tolerant than myself, brought him the blanket on our next visit. Exploring the dense forest on the northern side of the hill, we made the discovery of a temple which for some unknown reason had been abandoned by man and allowed to fall into ruin. Nature was reasserting itself, and a tree had pushed its way through the domed roof, through the domed roof. We stood before the temple for some time, letting our imagination conjure up its deities and rites. But we did not venture in, since it was likely to become a home to snakes, scorpions, or other beasts. The light filtered down to us through the foliage of the thick canopy of the trees. When we found a place where we could look above it, we saw Arunachala very near, looking much more austere than from any other aspect and steeply rising to its high brilliant peak pointing into the sky. Anyone who is in Tiruvannamalai, and I have talked to some who have come from foreign lands, they say the great blessing in Tiruvannamalai is that even when you are absorbed in some such other attention of a passing temple or other thing, the moment you lift your head, there is the jnana meditation for you because Arunachala blesses you with his darshan. Just lifting up your head is enough. So, from this varied experiences, when they just lift their head, they have darshan of Arunachala, which directly reminds them of their sadhana and what more is required. That is why it is said that even if you think of Arunachala from far, Smarana Arunachala, then the liberation from this wheel of time, from this samsara, is assured. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri.
Namo Ramana. Great blessing from Bhagavan to have the readings about those who have been in his presence and in the presence of Arunachala and imbibed its glory, and to have the reading from Sri Nandakumarji, who is ever in Bhagavan's presence. Now we go on to the sharing of self-inquiry to get us into that presence in a steady manner. We have the sharing of self-inquiry by Sri Dilip Sinha.
Namo Ramana. Dhyayet Sharada Chandra Sundaramukam Tamraravinde Kshanam Bhaktabhishtavarabhayapradakaram Kaupinamatrojvalam Svatmanandarasanubhuti Sarvanavadhyangakam Shrimantam Shri Ramaneshwaram Guruvaram Yogasana Dhyasitam Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Dhyayet Shri Ramaneshwaram Namo Ramana. Before we commence the Atma Vichara, let us listen to Bhagavan's Upadesha. As usual, I will be reading from Guru Vachaka Kovai from the chapter Experience of the Truth, and Bhagavan today has blessed the subject of Nirvikalpa Samadhi. Verse 894, Samadhi is only remaining firmly established as the natural awareness I am. Forsake the awareness associated with the limitation that unites with you through delusion and rest in that limitation-free state. I repeat, Samadhi is only remaining firmly established as the natural awareness I am. Forsake the awareness associated with the, within brackets, body, limitation, that unites with you through delusion and rest in that limitation free state. This is the true definition of Advaita. There is only one. When there is only one, when the delusion makes it appear as two, as though I am this body, body not necessarily means the physical one, any sort of idea, any sort of concepts which are even mental is also association of the awareness with that body and making a limitation. So here Bhagavan is asking us to forsake all that limitation, recognize that our natural state I am, which Bhagavan makes it very clear is the substrate, whether we are in the waking, dream, or in sleep. So that includes all of these three. Therefore, let us forsake all these four divisions by only identifying with a certain thing. If we can only let go that identification with a certain thing and hold on to that I amness, which is the substrate at all time, that is the samadhi, that is the limitation free state, because it includes everything and yet transcends all of it at the same time. Therefore, to remain in that state of I am is the real samadhi, which includes and transcends at the same time. Therefore, in order to, the whole purpose of the sadhana is to make sure that we don't get limited, because our natural state is to include and transcend. That is our natural state, the state of the self. But because of the wrong ideas, because of the delusion, because of ignorance, we often limit ourselves with a body, with a limitation. Therefore, Bhagavan has given us this Atma Vichara, wherein he asks us to question diligently every thought which rises, limiting us to that thought or the concept of the thought, and therefore inquire to whom is this thought. Moment we do that, we obviously recognize it is for me. Thereupon, he asks us to inquire, who am I? What is the real source of this I? What do I refer to as I? When we inquire the source of the I, what is that we refer to as I? We reach that natural state of awareness, which is I am. And we move away from the limited delusion and get identified, get established in our delusion free, limitation free I am. And by repeatedly moving away from the limitation and getting established in the limitation free awareness, which is our own natural state, Bhagavan assures that one will gain enough strength to remain in that state and therefore achieve that natural sahaja samadhi, that is our natural state. With the immense grace of Bhagavan, with alone we could have come to this Atma Vichara, with that grace alone that we can comprehend what he is trying to say us, with that grace which makes us establish in that state. Let us call upon that grace for the next 10 minutes and do Atma Vichara with the immense grace of the Master. Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Namo Ramana. Thank you all.
Namo Ramana. We continue the satsang, the sharing from Sri Venkatesh Deshpande on Gita Sara, verses chosen by Bhagavan Ramana from the Bhagavad Gita.
Vasudeva Satam Devam Kansachanurmardanam Devaki Paramanandam Krishnam Vande Jagadgurum. Om Shantakaram Bhujagashayanam Padmanabham Suresham Vishwadharam Gaganasadrisham Meghavarnam Shubhangam Lakshmikantam Kamalanayanam Yogiradhyanagamyam Vande Vishnum Bhavayaharam Sarvalokaikanaatham. Om We're doing manana on the Bhagavad Gita Sara. In the last satsang, we touched upon the 32nd verse, where Shri Krishna says, out of the 4 categories of devotees, the man of knowledge, Jnani, I, the Supreme Lord, am extremely dear to the Jnani, and he is also extremely dear to me. So now, today we will be doing manana by His grace on the verse number 33, which is from the chapter 7, verse number 19. I request Sapna to kindly chant the verses, please.
Yes, sir. अथ श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासारः बहूनां जन्मनामन्ते ज्ञानवान् मां प्रपद्यते वासुदेवः सर्वमिति समहात्मा सुदुर्लभः बहूनां जन्मनामन्ते ज्ञानवान् मां प्रपद्यते वासुदेवः सर्वमिति समहात्मा सुदुर्लभः. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Sapna. At the end of many a birth, only the man of knowledge is enabled to reach me by realizing that all this is God, Vasudeva. Such a great soul is very rare indeed. This verse is in praise of a jnani, man of knowledge. It is after doing sadhana, spiritual practices, for innumerable births and accumulating the right conditioning that a seeker is able to get the mature knowledge that no object in this world is apart from the self. He perceives directly that all the objects are nothing but the Supreme Self called Vasudeva. Such a person is extremely rare indeed, as nobody can equal such a jnani or excel him. In other words, the jnani remains as the very self, and there is no world apart from the self. This is what Nandkumar beautifully read. All is one is all, and beyond all. A jnani does not find anything different or separate from the self. All are in the self. It is wrong to imagine that there is the world and there is a body in it, and you dwell in the body. If the truth is known, the universe and what is beyond it will be found to be only in the self. There is no being who is not conscious and therefore who is not Shiva. Not only is he Shiva, but also all else of which he is aware or not aware. But if he sees his self, he is not aware of his separateness from the universe. In fact, his individuality and others and the other entities vanish, although they persist in all their forms. Shiva is seen as the universe. So, if we really, to make it very simple, when we use the mind, we are in Dvaita. Means we are seeing names and forms. We are in Dvaita. In a no mind situation, you're in Advaita. Advaita means there is only one. So that's a very simple way of saying the same thing. Here, Bhagavan Ramana has replaced the word Vasudeva by Shiva. It is all one and the same thing. There is an interesting episode that happened in the presence of Bhagavan Ramana. Krishna Prem Maharaj, Ronald Nixon, asked Bhagavan as to his opinion about the afore discussed verse, Vasudeva Sarvamati. Bhagavan Ramana quipped back, yes, it is a very good attitude, but if everybody is Vasudeva, then it also means that the seeker should also be Vasudeva. When once the seeker himself is Vasudeva, the absolute self, there is nothing further required or remains to be achieved. So the great ones always say, to know the self is to be the self. So that's why they say, keep doing self-inquiry. If you look at these three words Nandkumar said, all is one in all in one. So if you keep doing self-inquiry, you really understand that all is in one. And then when you see the one in yourself, you see the self in yourself, then you'll see the one in all. You'll see that same Vasudeva, you'll see the same self in all. And then when you really see the thing in all, then you only see the infinity, you see everything, and that is beyond all. So that means initially you may see that the name form to be also Vasudeva, but then you realize that everything, the Purnamada, you'll be in a state wherein everything is also so beyond all. So beyond all means all has some number or has some count to it, but beyond all means everything is only Isha Vasyamidam Sarvam is what Bhagavan is trying to say in this verse. So Shri Krishna clears this common perception of the intellectually inclined people that bhakti devotion is inferior to jnana, knowledge. They are disdainful towards people engaged in devotion. They look down upon them and consider themselves to be superiors as they are engaged in the brainy act of acquiring knowledge. Whereas Sri Krishna declares that a jnani spends several lifetimes cultivating knowledge, and only when his or her jnana matures does he finally surrender to God. In fact, it is true knowledge that leads to devotion. A very important aspect in our sadhana, and see the path of jnana as well as the path of devotion lead to the same point. Which it is beautifully said in this verse. Let us look at this example of a man who was walking on the beach. He steps upon an object on the sand and finds it to be a golden ring. He thinks of it as an artificial jewelry worth $10, keeps it in his pocket and forgets about it. After a few days, he remembers it and shows it to a friend who is a goldsmith. He checks it and says, this is a pure gold worth at least $500. The man feels thrilled to have found something precious and wears it every day. A few days later pass by and his uncle visits him, who is a jeweler. The uncle looks at the ring and says, wow, the stone in your gold ring is a precious diamond. Where did you get this? It costs more than $50,000. On hearing this, the man is overwhelmed and could not believe that what his uncle just said. His uncle understood this and said, "It seems you don't believe me. I'm willing to pay you $40,000 for it." Now the man feels elated as if he has won a lottery. He loves the diamond studded gold ring much more now that he knows its real value. This example demonstrates the direct relationship between knowledge and love. Nand Kumar in his reading was talking about love, and this when the value of the ring was perceived by the man to be less, his love for it was also lesser, and as his knowledge of its value increased, the love for it and the joy he got from it also kept increasing. The Ramayana says, without knowledge, there cannot be faith. Without faith, love cannot grow. So without knowledge, there cannot be faith in the infinite. Without faith, the more faith you have, love cannot grow. Similarly, if someone has acquired true knowledge and claims to know the Brahman, then love for him comes very naturally. Else, their knowledge is merely theoretical if they do not feel the love that fosters devotion. So, if a person of true knowledge, a person who has true knowledge, love comes very natural to him. Why does it come naturally? Because he sees these three. He sees all in one. He sees one in all and beyond all. He sees everything as himself. When he sees everything as himself, that means when he loves himself, he loves everybody else naturally. So it is not, he doesn't have to make an effort to be able to love somebody else. Shri Krishna says the Jnani spends several lifetimes seeking true knowledge, and when knowledge matures into true wisdom, that the Supreme Lord is all that is, they surrender to Him. Nevertheless, such noble souls are very rare. So finally, true seeking is, in fact, the dedicated march towards such exquisite fullness of the mind and vision. Wisdom is verily the all-fold perception where nothing proves disharmonious or out of place. In it, the inner being grows to full dimensions, displaying its majesty and charm everywhere. In place of worldliness overpowering the mind's fullness overwhelms the worldly life, making the mind spiritual, divine, devotional, and sublime in every way. Everyone, Krishna asserts, is a rightful heir to this fortune. So by Bhagwan's grace and by Shri Krishna's grace, Bhagwan Shri Krishna actually are the same. All is one is all, and beyond all. So may we all be blessed in having great mumukshutva for being able to attain the highest knowledge, and the end of the birth, Bhagavan says, he'll reach me, and realizing this, God is everywhere. Such a great one is very rare indeed. We are all extremely rare devotees because we have all been given the greatest opportunity in our lives. He's chosen some of us to be able to be in the satsang, think of him, and do manana on this and do self-inquiry. So we must not lose this rare opportunity to be that great soul to go and finally emerge at Shri Krishna's feet. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya. Jai Shri Krishna. Thank you.
You move on to the sharing by Dr. Kalarani Rangaswamy on Jnana Vichara Padalam, Devi Kalottaram, a translation to Tamil by Bhagavan. She will be dwelling on the essence of these verses.
ஓம் நமோ பகவதே ஸ்ரீ ரமணாய. அருணாச்சலமென அகமே நினைப்பவர் அகத்தை வேறறுப்பாய் அருணாச்சலம். Namo Ramana to all. With the abundance grace of Bhagavan, we are meditating on Devi Kalotra Jnana Vichara Padalam, very generously given to us by Ramana. In the last satsang, we learned that Mandi Ulal Vayu Samam Chittam. Our mind is like a strong storm blowing. It will be very difficult to bear a storm if it is blowing outside. Imagine if it is blowing inside us. How can we bear it? How many chaos it might create? At one time, our mind will instruct us to do a particular work in a particular way. And we also will start the work accordingly. In halfway, the mind will change its direction and instruct us to do the work in exactly the opposite way. Now the confusion arises. Oh God, which way is right? Is it the first one or the second one? If it is the second one, I have to change the whole methodology to do the work completely. What am I to do? Right, I obey the order of my mind and shift to the second method. I have to start from the scratch. But even now, what is the guarantee that the mind will be stable? It might change and instruct us to do the work in a different way. If so, we become a slave to the mind. We are not allowed to act according to our own wish. We have been ruled by our mind and which we consider as all powerful because we give such great importance to the mind. In the last satsang, we ended with 3 questions. Is it possible to control this windstorm of mind? Is it possible to make the mind calm? If controlled, how will we be? Why does our mind become a windstorm? Because we give importance to the thoughts. When a thought or desire enters, till that desire is not fulfilled, the mind will be pondering over the desired object. Oh, till I am not able to get that, we try it with people around us to get it satisfied. If it is not being materialized, we pray to God. If that desire gets fulfilled, the mind will be calm. But till when? Till another thought or desire enter our mind. Again, there is a storm in the mind. Bhagavan says, look into the source of these desires or thoughts. For that, one has to be attentive to the thought and find the root cause of all these thoughts. As the root cause of all thought is the I thought, find out who is this I. எண்ணங்களே மனம் யாவினும் நான் என்னும் எண்ணமே மூலமாம் உந்தீப்பர. Of all thoughts, the root of all thought is the I thought. I have a great desire. Bhagavan says, don't try to fulfill those desires. Instead, try to go to the source and find out from where the desire arises. In the process, what happens? The mind or the ahankara gets merged into its source. Because Bhagavan says, then once we start inquiring about the thought vanishes, and when there is no thought, there is no place for the mind in us. Manadin uruvai maravadu usava manamena ondrilai undipara. When inquired, the mind melts into its own source. Ramakrishna Paramahamsa says, when we put a doll made of sugar inside a sagar and ask the doll to find out the depth of that sagara, will the doll be able to tell us the depth of that sagara? No, as it is made up of sugar, it will get dissolved in the water and will not be able to report anything. Like that, when mind is interested with the work of finding its source, it will merge into the Nija Swarupa and will not be able to report anything. So Bhagwan says, when the mind realizes that the sadhaka has started his inquiry about the mind will come to know that there is no place for it. It will I'll tell you an example. There was a very big marriage was going on. It was for 1 week's time. Right from the day one, a person was very actively doing all the work. Bride's relatives thought he was groom's relative, and groom's relatives thought he was the bride's relative. He was going on giving instructions and was virtually ruling over all the people in the marriage. At times it was irritating, but no one could say anything. On the 7th day, when all the functions were over, bride's father and the groom's father was very relaxed and was chatting with each other. At that time, bride's father said, "Oh, there was a boy from your side and he was very helpful." Bridegroom father was shocked. "What? A boy from our side?" No, not at all. I thought he was from your side." No wonder he was helpful, but he was bossing over us, you know. Our relatives really got irritated, but we kept quiet because he was from your side. No, Samandhi, I don't even know him. On hearing this, what did the boy did was he ran away from that place. Likewise, when we inquire about the mind, we cannot find the mind. It will run away. It will get merged into the Swarupa because there is no Rupa for the mind. Tedinal Ottam Pidikkum Peyahande. When we incline to search the mind, then it vanishes. The Ahankara vanishes. What remains is the self alone. In this stanza, Bhagavan beautifully says, the person who can control the storm-like mind and be stable without being affected by the worldly happenings, is so great as the creator, Brahma, the destructor, Shiva, the protector, Vishnu. He is actually Indra, Asura's Guru, Brahaspati. Not only that, he is the great Pandit, and he is the one who have got all the jnana. In this stanza, Bhagavan says, Kurungal, Avandane, Nanmuhanum, Achivanum, Malum, Avan Devar Kon, Muhanum Avan, Avandan, Ahila Asura, Guruvum Avan, Mayogi, Agila Tabodanamumam, Pandidanum, Mamburanum, Paramartha Per Kondavanum, Annavane. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramana.
Namo Ramana. We go on to the sharing by Sri Ujjwal Jagadish of verses from Ganapati Muni's Ramana Chatvarimshat.
Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Ramanena sanatamidam bhuvanam. Ramanena sanatamidam bhuvanam. Jagava bhagavat padamanya janasulabam. Swagunairadhigatya परं च यथा ममतारहितेन हितेन सतां निहितेन गणप्रभुणा हृदये भगवत्नेले अन्यजनरिगे दुर्लभ तन्न गुणमहिमेಯಿಂದ ಪರಮಪದ ಗೆದ್ದವ ಮಮತಾರಹಿತನು ಹಿತನು ಸಜ್ಜನರಿಗೆ ಗಣಪತಿ ಹೃದಯದಿ ರಾರಾಜಿಪನಿಗೆ ಮಮಕಾರರಹಿತನು ಹಿತನು ಸಜ್ಜನರಿಗೆ ಗಣಪತಿ ಹೃದಯದಿ ರಾರಾಜಿಪನಿಗೆ. In this verse, Ganapati Muni describes Ramana as the one who has attained that supreme state of being divine, of being the supreme Lord, which is very difficult to be attained by normal human beings. And this he has attained and won over this state by his own virtue. And the third line, as if to tell, do you know what is that virtue? That virtue is mamakara rahita. He is the one without the feeling that this is mine and this is me. The one who is devoid of this mamakara. Ramana, who has completely realized that he is the self, which is the whole universe. When he has completely understood this truth, then there is no something apart to say that these are mine and these are not mine, because everything is included in the self. So for Bhagavan, who is the whole universe, who is the self, there is nothing apart from him to say this belongs to me or this is me. We see many instances where Bhagavan Ramana has, out of his compassion, has shown various instances. There is an instance where a devotee asked Bhagavan, what is nishkamya karma? The karma that is done without any desires. Bhagavan did not answer his question, but he had to go for his walk on the hill. So he left to his walk and the devotees followed him to the hill. And there Bhagavan took one stick and started rubbing the stick, the rough part of the stick, making it smooth with a rough leaf. And this took around 2-3 hours. He's sitting in one place and rubbing the stick and making it smooth and beautiful. He makes a wonderful walking stick. And after the walking stick is ready, a shepherd boy is walking on a way with a very, very sad face, as if he's crying. And Bhagavan asked, oh boy, what happened? And the boy said, I have lost my stick, which I used to use to take my sheep. That stick is missing. And Ramana, without a thought, gave that stick, the beautiful walking stick that he had made with lot of effort of 2-3 hours and sitting in one place, he just gave it without a thought. Such is the mamakara rahita virtue of Bhagavan Ramana. And we see that devotees used to come and offer various things. A devotee came and offered a shawl to Bhagavan Ramana. He accepted it. And one more devotee came. Such a beautiful shawl, Bhagavan. Will you please give it to me as prasadam? Please take it. Ramana never possessed anything because he was beyond mamakara. And Bhagavan does not stop at this. He is that parasmani, the parasmani which can change if it comes in contact with one iron or any metal, it just changes it into gold. But Ramana is such parasmani that he gives his own state to his disciple. So Ramana, he gives his own, the mamakara rahita state to all his devotees to give that state. Ramana tells us, inquire what is the source of this mamakara. You say, this is mine, this is me, I have done this. Find out the source of this mamakara. The mamakara rises from ahankara. Because you exist, yours and what you possess exists. So find out who you are. He gives this clue to us. to make us turn within and attain that same virtue and that same state which Bhagavan has attained. And recently we did a performance on the life of Muruganar Swami, and there's one beautiful instance which shows that how Mamakara Rahita Bhagavan was still, but he was compassionate too. He was Hita Sajjanerige. He was Hitena Sata, those who are good. He was compassionate to them. For Ramana, there's no good and bad. Everyone are the Arunachala Swarupa. Everyone is one. He does not do this. We have heard of a sinner who was blessed by Bhagavan too. So there is no good, but those who turn towards him are all good. And to those who turn towards him, he is compassionate to them and he shows us the right path. There was this lady called Adi Amma who was the friend of one kitchen worker called Subbalakshmi Ammal. And she had come to see Subbalakshmi Ammal and stay some days at Ramanashramam. So at the time when the lunch was served, she used to stand in the place where just in front of Bhagavan Ramana, the plate was, a leaf plate was kept. And as she was not very familiar of how to sit, where to sit and what to do, she was just standing near one of the leaf plate. And Bhagavan saw this, that she does not know where to sit. So Bhagavan himself requested, "Oh Amma, please be seated. Please be seated and take part of lunch with us." So Adi Amma was very, very elated. Oh, Bhagavan himself has told me to sit and have the lunch with him. So she was very, very elated. Next day, at the same time, at the lunch time, she was enacting the same drama. She was standing and waiting for Bhagavan to request her to sit and partake the lunch with Bhagavan. So she was waiting, and Bhagavan, maybe even today, maybe she has not understood the things that happened in the ashram. So again he requested, "Amma, please sit down and have lunch." Then the third day also, Adi Amma wanted the same attention from Bhagavan Ramana, and Bhagavan Ramana got to know this is the intention. So he never paid attention to Adi Amma and was in his own. And seeing this, Adi Amma's friend Subbalakshmi Amma, who was a kitchen worker, while serving the aviyal, which was that day's speciality delicacy that she was bringing, she brought that aviyal, and first Bhagavan was served and later everybody was served. While coming to Bhagavan, slowly pouring the aviyal into the plate of Bhagavan Ramana, she recommended, "Bhagavan, Adi Amma is still standing. Will you not tell her to please sit?" And Bhagavan, seeing Subbalakshmi Amma, told, "Adi Amma has Subbalakshmi Amma to take care and give lunch, but who is taking care of Muruganar? He has gone in the hot sun for Bhiksha, and today his favorite dish, aviyal, has been made. Who will think about Muruganar? We have for Adi Amma, we have Subbalakshmi Amma." So he commented, "And who will think about Muruganar?" As soon as this was told, one more kitchen worker, Shantama, told, "Bhagavan, I will take the aviyal to Muruganar." So she quickly came with a coconut shell and she poured some aviyal and ran to Muruganar Swami, who was going near the Dakshinamurti temple. From the ashram from Palakotu, he was walking towards the Dakshinamurti temple. She ran and she told, "Oh Muruganar, where are you going? Why are you not listening to what I say? You are going here to have Bhiksha. Bhagavan is thinking about you in the dining hall. He is thinking about you. He is telling this today, Muruganar's favorite dish, aviyal, has been made. And he told who will take it to Muruganar. He is thinking about you. Take this. This is what Bhagavan has given it to you." So Muruganar was thrilled and tears started flowing from his eyes as always. And he sat down there itself near the Dakshinamurti temple and putting the coconut shell onto his head, putting it to his eyes, he relished it bit by bit, remembering that grace of Bhagavan Ramana. Such is the grace of Bhagavan Ramana, who takes care of those who turn towards him. And while enacting the scene, we all had a question. What happened to Adi Amma? Did Adi Amma sit down and have the lunch, or was she still waiting for Bhagavan's instructions to sit? Bhagavan is the Murti, embodiment of compassion. So if Adi Amma, he has suggested that he is the one who is taking care of Muruganar Swami. He is the Bhagavat Swarupa who is taking care of all the beings in the whole universe. And for such a one, will he not pay attention to the Adiyama who is standing just beside him? Will he not take care of her? If she had understood this suggested meaning, the Vyangyartha of what Bhagavan had told, she would have sat down and had the lunch with Bhagavan. But if she had not understood Bhagavan is still the embodiment of compassion, he would have spoken to Adiyamma and told, "Oh Adiyamma, please sit down. I'm always paying attention to you. Even if I seem to be not paying attention to you, I'm always paying attention to all the beings. I'm ever available because I'm the self." This Ramana would have made her understand in the way that she could understand and made her sit and have the lunch. And such is the compassion of Bhagavan Ramana that he knew the turmoil which Ganapati Muni was undergoing, because as the self, as Arunachala, it was ever standing. The Arunachala was standing, and the Arunachala had drawn Ganapati Muni to its presence. But Ganapati Muni could not understand this suggested meaning of the silence of Arunachala. So he wanted it to be spoken and explicitly told. So he came in search of Sadguru Ramana and fell at his feet and asked for the instruction. And Bhagavan gave the instruction. You say, I want to know. I want to know. Find out from where this I thought arises and merge at its source. That is true tapas. You say you have done crores of japa. Find out the true source of the mantra nada within and merge at its source. That is the true tapas. Bhagavan says mantra because we can adapt it to any sadhana that we do. If we are eating food, find out from where this thought of eating arises from you and merge at its source. If you are dancing, find out from where the movement arises from within and merge at its source. Find out from where the sound of the music arises within and merge at its source. The source of all activity is the same self and merge at its source. You will understand the truth, says Bhagavan Ramana to Ganapati. And he shined in the heart of Ganapati as that Atmanubhava. And Ganapati Muni realized he is not ordinary human being. He is Bhagavan himself. Om Namo Bhagavate Shri Ramanaya.
Namo Ramana. Prostrations to Ramana, shining as a self in all beings. By the immense grace of that self manifest as Ramana, we are meditating on the Ramana Ashtottara Shatanamavali, the litany of 108 names on Bhagavan Ramana by Sri Vishwanatha Swami. And we are on the Nama Sundararya Tapah Phalaya Namaha. Having described that Bhagavan is the incarnation of the Subramanya Tattva, the Guru Tattva, the destroyer of the ego in us, that he is the undivided consciousness who is manifest as light, as the light of the self, as the light of awareness, and that he was born in the kshetra of Bhuminatha, that he is born within the kshetra, within every one of us, as the body is known as Bhumi, that he has come to shine as the Lord. The undivided consciousness has become manifest within us as the light of the Guru, as the light of the Aham Spurana, to reveal its true nature, and it is so manifest. Also, he was born in the Bhuminatha Kshetra, which is Tiruchuri, the sacred Tiruchuri, the Churi or the whirlpool, which cancels the whirlpool in which we are caught, the whirl of thoughts, the whirl of endless becomings. Alayai varipiravi attanayum matra, he says, is the hill, Arunachala is the hill which is there to change, to transform, to transcend that endless cycle of wave upon wave upon wave of birth and death. And here it is the whirl, the swirl of thought upon thought upon thought, to transcend that, to make us transcend that. Bhagavan was born in the sacred Bhuminatha Kshetra Bhuminatha Salottitaya Namaha Parashara Kulottamsaya Namaha in the honorable, privileged lineage of the sage Parashara, to which the Guru of Sri Rama, Vashishta, also belonged. In that lineage, Bhagavan was born, Bhagavan Ramana was born, to whom? To Sundararya. Sundararya Tapapalaya Namaha. We saw that he is the fruition, says Vishwanatha Swami, of Sundaramayar's tapas. And we saw the goodness of Sundaramayar, the natural goodness of Sundaramayar. And we meditated upon the fact that Alagamma is included in Sundaramayar's tapas, because there is no dana, there is no gift that Sundaramayar could give without Alagamma being a part of it. So all his goodness, Alagamma was an integral part of it. At the same time, the Nama Sundararya Tapaphalaya Namaha, when we are seeing it from the perspective now, when Bhagavan's Ashtotram has been written, after we see Bhagavan's life, after we see that extraordinary phenomenon which is called Bhagavan Sri Ramana Maharshi, which Carl Jung also says is the whitest spot in the white space of consciousness, that is India, that is the Indian understanding of the spiritual awareness, the spiritual truth, which is also, Bhagavan is also described by some as a phenomenon, a spiritual phenomenon that comes in one or two aeons once in an aeon or two, once in millions of years. Such an extraordinary spiritual phenomenon, to which every spiritual teacher bows down, from which every spiritual teacher takes inspiration, and which in a subtle manner has its influence upon every walk of life, has its influence upon the entirety of the consciousness of the people, the collective consciousness of the people. Such an extraordinary phenomenon is described by Vishwanatha Swami as the fruit of Sundaramayar's tapas. What kind of tapas must Sundaramayar have performed if that tapas is to bear such a fruit? Such a fruit. So, in a way, Sundaramayar's spontaneous, natural goodness, his dharma, these are things that we see. We see a simple, good man, a dharmic man, but there must have been in Sundaramayar tapas or austerity, spiritual austerity of a dimension that we probably cannot imagine. And that is why he is Sundararya Tapaphalam. He is the fruit, Ramana is the fruit of Sundararya's tapas. That means Sundaramayar's tapas includes all forms of tapasya. It includes every form of penance, and when that is done, the fruition is Ramana, who is Jnana, who is the fullness, who is steady abidance in the self, happens when every form of tapas is over. And in the life of one about whom we were reminded just now by Ujjwal, that he was also referred to by Bhagavan by the same term as Bhagavan referred to his own father. He was called Nayana. Bhagavan called his father Nayana because he was inspired to do so or rather, it was suggested him to do so by a Telugu family who were their neighbors. And he called his father Nayana, and he called Ganapati Muni also Nayana. And Bhagavan was Ganapati Muni's fruition of his tapas was also Bhagavan. He came to Bhagavan to find the fruition of his tapas, to find his tapo phalaha, and to find the fruition of a tapas which was all inclusive. So we can see that this must have been Sundaramayar's tapas. And when we look at the Upadesha Sara, we see Bhagavan delineating what that tapas is. Right from Ishwararpitam karma, Ishwararpitam nechaya kritam. Tapas Bhagavan declares here in Upadesha Saram begins with the offering of all one's deeds to the Supreme. And so we can very well envisage that Sundaramayar's deeds must all have been offered to the Supreme. They must all have been Ishwararpitam karma and Nechayakritam with no desire for himself. Such must have been the tapas and Chitta Shodhakam, and surpassing that, he would have gone to the state of seeing Ashtamurti Brit Deva Pujanam. He would have certainly seen Bhuminateshwara in all. And that is why his doors were open. It was not merely with a sense of wanting to do good, but certainly because he must have seen the Supreme in all. He must have seen Bhuminateshwara alone in each and every person who came into his life. Ashtamurti Brit. And we do not know about the mantra sadhana which Sundaramayar might have done. And Sarala Chintana. Obviously, whatever penance was done by Sundaramayar was Ajyadhara, it was continuous. There was no break in his penance. There was no dichotomy. There were no changes. Today we heard about the mind being ever changeable from Dr. Kalarani. That changeable mind was not there in him. And as was told to us, Bahunam Janmanam Ante Jnanavam Mam Prapadyate Vasudeva Sarvamiti. This which Bhagavan has indicated in his verse Ashtamurti Brit Deva Pujanam, and again in his Arunachala Pancharatnam, உன்னிடத்தில் ஒப்புவித்த உள்ளத்தால் எப்பொழுதும் உன்னை கண்டெல்லாமும் உன்னுருவாம் அந்நியமில் அன்பு செய்யும் அன்னோன் அருணாச்சலா வெல்கும். He triumphs. Such a one triumphs. And what is the triumph of Sundaram Iyer? But to get that great fruit, which being the fruition of his tapas, has become available to the entire universe as the sweetest of sweet fruits, which Muruganar Swami would say, tasting the sweetness of this fruit, one is never satiated. It is uncloying, is the expression which Professor Swaminathan would give. Such a sweet fruit has come to us from Sundaram Iyer. How much should we remember him in gratitude? We must prostrate again and again to the tapas, that extraordinary penance of Sundararya, which has given to us that sweet fruit, the fruit of the self, Ramana. Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. We now have the chanting of Arunachala, Aksharamana Malai verses by Srimati Radha.
Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala Shiva, Arunachala, அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா தேடாதுற்றனர் திருவருணிதியக தியக்கம் தீர்த்தருள் அருணாச்சலா தைரியமோடும் உன்மெய்யக நாடாயம் தட்டழிந்தேன் அருள் அருணாச்சலா தொட்டருள் கைமை கட்டிடாயனி நட்டமாவே நருள் அருணாச்சலாம் தோடமில் நீயாக தோடொன்று என்றும் சொந்தோடம் ஒன்றிட அருள் அருணாச்சலாம் நகைக்கிடமில்லை நின் நாடிய என்னை அருணகையிட்டு பாணி அருணாச்சலாம் நாடிலை நாடிட நானாயொன்றினி காணுவா நின்றனை அருணாச்சலாம் நின்னெறி எரித்தென்னை நீராக்கிடும் முன் நின்னருள் மழை பொழி அருணாச்சலாம் நீ நானர புலி நிதங்களிமயமா நின்றிட நிலை அருள் அருணாச்சலாம் நுண்ணுரு உன்னையான் விண்ணுரு நன்னில எண்ணலைரும் என்றருணாச்சலாம் நூலறிவறியா பேதையனென்றென் மாலருள் வருட்டருள் அருணாச்சலாம் நெக்கு நெக்குருகியான் புக்கிட உன்னை புகனக்க நான் நின்றனை அருணாச்சலாம் நேசமில் எனக்குன்னாசையை காட்டி நிம்மோசம் செய்யாதருள் அருணாச்சலாம் அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா 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 அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சல சிவ அருணாச்சலா அருணாச்சலம் வாழி அன்பர்களும் வாழி அக்ஷரமண மாலை வாழி.
Namo Ramana. We conclude the satsang with Ashtotra Puja to Bhagavan at the altar of Subramanyam. Puja performed by Subramanyam and chanted by Prarthana and Vaibhavji and Ashwini and Uma with the Aarti song by Revati Shankar.
रमण भारद्वाज विश्वनाथ विरचितं श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तर शतनामावलिः अपार सच्चेत् सुखवारिराशे यस्योमि मात्रं भुवनं समस्तं गुहाहितं तं रमणं गभीरं चिन्ताविहीनं हृदि चिन्तयामि ॐ महासेन महोंशेन जाताय नमः ॐ श्रीरमणाय नमः ॐ गुरवे नमः ॐ अखण्डसंविदाकाराय नमः ॐ महौजसे नमः ॐ कारणोद्भवाय नमः ॐ जगद्वितावताराय नमः ॐ श्रीभूमिनाथस्थलोस्थिताय नमः ॐ पराशरकुलोत्तंसाय नमः ॐ सुन्दरार्यतपःफलाय नमः ॐ कमनीयसुचारित्राय नमः ॐ सहायाम्बा सहायवते नमः ॐ शोणाचलमहोलीनमानसाय नमः ॐ स्वर्णहस्तकाय नमः ॐ श्रीमद्द्वादशान्तमहास्थले लब्धविद्योदयाय नमः ॐ महाशक्तिनिपातेन प्रबुद्धाय नमः ॐ परमार्थविदे नमः ॐ तीव्राय नमः ॐ पितृपदान्वेषिणे नमः ॐ इन्दुमौलिना पितृमते नमः ॐ पितुरादेशतः शोणशैलं प्राप्ताय नमः ॐ तपोमयाय नमः ॐ उदासीनाय नमः ॐ महायोगिने नमः ॐ महोत्साहाय नमः ॐ कुशाग्रदिये नमः ॐ शान्तसङ्कल्पसम्रम्भाय नमः ॐ सुसन्द्रशे नमः ॐ सवित्रे नमः ॐ स्थिराय नमः ॐ तपक्षपितसर्वाङ्गाय नमः ॐ फुल्लाम्बुजविलोचनाय नमः ॐ चन्द्रिकासितहासश्रीमण्डिताननमण्डलाय नमः ॐ च्यूतवाट्यां समासीनाय नमः ॐ चूर्णिताखिलविभ्रमाय नमः ॐ वेदवेदान्ततत्त्वज्ञाय नमः ॐ चिन्मुद्रिणे नमः ॐ त्रिगुणातिगाय नमः ॐ विरूपाक्षगुहावासाय नमः ॐ विराजतचलाकृतये नमः ॐ उद्दीप्तनयनाय नमः ॐ पूर्णाय नमः ॐ रचिताचलताण्डवाय नमः ॐ गम्भीराय नमः ॐ परमाचार्याय नमः ॐ सुप्रसन्नाय नमः ॐ अभयप्रदाय नमः ॐ दक्षिणास्य निभाय नमः ॐ धीराय नमः ॐ दक्षिणाभिमुखाय नमः ॐ स्वराजे नमः ॐ महर्षये नमः ॐ भगवते नमः ॐ ईड्याय नमः
ॐ भूमविद्या विशारदाय नमः ॐ विमलाय नमः ॐ दीर्घदर्शिने नमः ॐ आप्ताय नमः ॐ ऋजुमार्गप्रदर्शकाय नमः ॐ समदृशे नमः ॐ सत्यदृशे नमः ॐ सत्याय नमः ॐ प्रशान्ताय नमः ॐ अमितविक्रमाय नमः ॐ सुकुमाराय नमः ॐ सदानन्दाय नमः ॐ मृदुभाषिणे नमः ॐ दयार्णवाय नमः ॐ श्री शोणाचल हृद्भूत स्कन्दाश्रमनिकेतनाय नमः ॐ सद्दर्शनोपदेष्ट्रे नमः ॐ सद्भक्तवृन्द परिवृताय नमः ॐ गणेशमुनिभृङ्गेन सेविताङ्घ्रिसरोरुहाय नमः ॐ गीतोपदेशसारादिग्रन्थसञ्चिन्न संशयाय नमः ॐ वर्णाश्रममतातीताय नमः ॐ रसज्ञाय नमः ॐ सौम्याय नमः ॐ आत्मवते नमः ॐ सर्वावनिमतस्थानाम् आराध्याय नमः ॐ सर्वसद्गुणिने नमः ॐ आत्मारामाय नमः ॐ महाभागाय नमः ॐ मातृमुक्तिविधायकाय नमः ॐ विनताय नमः ॐ विनुताय नमः ॐ विप्राय नमः ॐ मुनीन्द्राय नमः ॐ पावकोज्ज्वलाय नमः ॐ दर्शनादकसंहारिणे नमः ॐ मौनेन स्वात्मबोधकाय नमः ॐ हृच्छान्तिकरसान्निध्याय नमः ॐ स्मरणात् बन्धमोचकाय नमः ॐ अन्तस्तिमिरचण्डांशवे नमः ॐ संसारार्णवतारकाय नमः ॐ शोणाद्रीशस्तुतिद्रष्टे नमः ॐ हार्दविद्याप्रकाशकाय नमः ॐ अविच्युतनिजप्रज्ञाय नमः ॐ नैसर्गिकमहातपसे नमः ॐ कमण्डलुधराय नमः ॐ शुभ्रकौपीनवसनाय नमः ॐ गुहाय नमः ॐ दण्डपाणये नमः ॐ कृपापूर्णाय नमः ॐ भवरोगविषग्वराय नमः ॐ स्कन्दाय नमः ॐ देवतमाय नमः ॐ अमर्त्याय नमः ॐ सेनान्ये नमः ॐ पुरुषोत्तमाय नमः।
ॐ श्रीरमण भगवते नमः। श्रीरमणाष्टोत्तरशतनामपूजां समर्पयामि। यस्थाणोररुणाचलस्य पदयोः स्मृत्या जनिं प्राप्यत दिव्यानुग्रहसुप्रवाहविवशस्तादात्म्यभावं गतः हृन्निष्ठस्वगभीरनित्यतपसा लोकान् पुनास्येकराट् तस्मै श्रीरमणाय ते नम इदं लोकोत्तरज्योतिषे। नमो 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 रमण सदाशिवप्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि दर्शनसुखमङ्गलमुखसकलजीवहितसम्मुख ब्रह्मसङ्गिये नमो 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 रमण सदाशिवप्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि सदा तुष्ट सदा हृष्ट सदा शिवानन्दपुष्ट परममहर्षि ब्रह्मनिष्ठ समदर्शी नमो 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 रमण सदाशिवप्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि ನಮ್ಮ ಮನವದೊಂದು ಕಾಡು ನೀನರಿತಿಹೆ ಅದರ ಜಾಡು ಹಿತವನರಿತು ನೀಡುತ್ತೆಮ್ಮ ಕೊರೆಯ ತಣಿಸಲೈ ಬೇಡಲೆಂದು ಬಂದ ನಾವು ನೋಡಿಯೇ ತಣಿವೆವಯ್ಯ ಮೋಡಿಗಾರನೇ ಹಿತವ ನುಡಿದು ಪೊರೆ ನಮ್ಮನು ಬ್ರಹ್ಮ ಸಂಘಿಯೇ ನಮೋ 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 ರಮಣ ಸದಾಶಿವ प्रभावरण नमो महर्षि नमो महर्षि। बोलो भगवान श्री रमण महर्षि की जय।
Namo Ramana everyone.
Namo Ramana.
Namo Ramana.